diploma, or that you have a GED, or that you're in the process of getting a GED, which a GED, if you don't know, is an equivalency to a high school diploma. So your educational information should take care of proof of residence. But some people, maybe there's a little bit of a gap there. Maybe they've been out of high school for a couple of years. It would be easy to have come here under 16. You finish high school in a couple of years, and then maybe you start working, but you don't use your real name because you don't have any work papers. And those are the people who will have a little bit of a tricky time proving they were here, because maybe they get a paycheck in somebody else's name.
Right.
Or they got paid in cash, they never got a paycheck at all. So for people like that, I think it could be anything, but there may be things that they use their correct name for, like going to the doctor, because you don't want to make a mistake there. Or maybe you've got you later on qualify for a driver's license because you filed through LULAC. Then you're not only the date of your license proves you were here, but traffic tickets. Traffic tickets don't disqualify you from the program, so why not use them to prove that you were here? It can be anything really, but I think rather than collecting little scraps of paper for different days here and there, it's school and job. So if you're middle school, elementary school, high school, and then your employment. Because if you're fairly steadily employed, even if you're not paying taxes, there's going to be some record with your employer that they've been employing you for whatever period, and then we try to match the employers with whatever period of time we're lacking documentation from. So we try to go year by year. And if you said, well, I came here 10 years ago, we recommend making a pile of documents for each year. So you say, okay, here's my high school diploma. That takes care of that year. But for the next year, I was out of high school. What else have I got? Well, maybe that next year you registered for a selective service. Or you, like I said, you went to the doctor. Or you opened a bank account. Or you bought a car.
Taxes too? IRS too?
Well, that's great. If you've got taxes, great. It's just, I'm just talking about the unusual cases. If you pay your taxes, if you went to high school, pay your taxes and bought a house in your name, great. We have all kinds of papers. But some things either don't create paperwork, or people don't want to create paperwork because they're illegal. They're afraid, too much information all comes back to them in the form of the Immigration Service. So, let's see, where were we? So physically present in the United States on June 15th of 2007. The reason I say 2007 is because the law says you have to have been here, residing here for at least 5 years. Are currently in school, have graduated, obtained a certificate of completion from high school, have obtained a general education development, that's a GED certificate, or you can be an honorably discharged veteran of the Armed Forces or the Coast Guard. That, in other words, can take the place of high school. You may not have been convicted of a felony. You may not have been convicted of a significant misdemeanor, and you may not have been convicted of 3 or more other misdemeanors. So what does that mean? The answer is we're not sure. We know what a felony is because each state's set of laws describe misdemeanors and felonies. So if you killed somebody, you're probably not qualified for the program.
So a big crime will be a felony?
Yeah. In most cases, most states differentiate serious crimes and call them felonies from less serious crimes and call them misdemeanors. And then some other kinds of conduct might just be infractions, like getting a speeding ticket. It's not a crime, certainly not a felony. In most cases, it's not a misdemeanor unless you're going 120 miles an hour.
Over 100 miles.
Yeah, something like that. And then in some cases, it's just an infraction, and it's not even, it doesn't even need to be reported on the forms. But let's talk about that for a second, because a misdemeanor would be stealing a pack of gum. So we know that that's just, even if you just got one of those, we know it's not a felony to steal a pack of gum. But this says significant misdemeanor. So what's a significant misdemeanor? There's a lot of misdemeanors. There's a lot of things are illegal. As best we can tell for right now, I think it's safe to assume that a drug offense, even though it's often a misdemeanor, like simple possession of marijuana for your own personal use, is a misdemeanor. But I think that they would consider that a significant misdemeanor. We know, because we've asked the question, we know that a DUI will be considered a significant misdemeanor. And I personally think that's unfortunate, because that's going to disqualify a lot of people. But so far, one of the things they're including as a significant misdemeanor is a DUI. So drug offenses, DUI, I think probably crimes of violence, like domestic battery. I think that would disqualify. Now this is assuming you were convicted of these things, not just charged with them. So I think domestic battery would qualify. I'm not so sure about certain things that may or may not include violence, like auto theft. It's probably a felony in most states, but it's not a felony in every state. That's for sure. It often depends on the value. And it depends on whether you successfully stole the car. And so there are a lot of things that will have to be done on a case-by-case basis. And I think in those kinds of cases, it's going to be very important to get the criminal records, which would include the arrest report, which is the thing that the police write out. It's never very favorable. Sometimes it's not exactly true. It's never written for you, it's always written against you. But they'll want to see the police report, and they'll want to see the final disposition, which means what did the judge do with the case. If there's no conviction, it's not a problem. If you weren't convicted, if you were null-prossed, the case was dismissed, you actually had a jury trial and you were acquitted, that's not a conviction. You can't use it against you. Okay, so those are the basic qualifiers. A couple important things I think to say is that we have been trained that entering the country without inspection is a big problem, and you can't let anybody know about that, and it inhibits the rest of your life if you entered without inspection.
You mean when you enter through the work borders?
Yeah, you sneak in through Mexico, let's say. For this program, this is exactly the people it's trying to help. If you came in without inspection, that's not a problem. So you want to admit that, especially if it gives you the necessary time that you need. Let's say you managed to sneak in and sneak back out of the United States, and then you recently came in with a tourist visa that you got later. Well, you want to tell them about the time that you snuck in through Mexico 10 years ago and lived here for the following 9 years. Because it sounds bad that you snuck in, but that's what qualifies you. Because you were here.
The people that walk on the cross the borders qualify for this program?
Yes, exactly. And that's my point. It's such a negative thing that it is such a negative act that if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you entered the country illegally by coming across, let's say, from Mexico, the citizen can't file for you they have to file for you, and you have to go back to the embassy in your home country, and it's a very difficult process.
The 10 years, have to wait 10 years.
Yeah,
or whatever.
and you could qualify for the 10-year bar if you've been here illegally for more than a year, exactly right. But you have to think about who is this program trying to help. The kids that were brought here prior to their 16th birthday weren't trying to sneak into the country. They were just following their parents. They didn't have any choice in the matter. So it corrects a lot of these problems with the law. And this is my partner, Guerra,
How you doing?
and I think everybody understands me, but I'm not sure. How are we doing? Would you like any of that repeated?
Todos hablan inglés acá, ¿no?
Sí,
Dos hablo o dos
It,
no hablo.
she understands, but she won't speak that well.
Entiendo, pero no
tá.
hablo.
Ele habla bien porque habla despacio.
Let's see, so, we've been through all the qualifiers. The form itself just came out today, and actually, we're still reviewing it. But in the instructions is included everything that we just talked about. The possible exception would be this: if you are in proceedings with the government, if you have been served with a notice to appear in court, or you got one in the mail, or you are in court, or you were in court and you got an order of removal, or any
Você
kind of...
tem qualquer problema com a imigração que está acontecendo agora? Segurança.
The point is, again, this is another one of these things that is really negative, and you think, oh, okay, my case is over. Not for this, because remember, it's trying to help the people who weren't trying to do anything wrong. They were brought here by somebody else, and a child could be in removal proceedings and get a removal order because his parents brought him here, and therefore he was illegal, and therefore he was ordered deported, which is now called removed. So even if you have a piece of paper that has your name on it that says you are ordered removed from the United States, if you meet all of the 7 qualifications that we just talked about, you still qualify for this program. In other words, if you've been deported, you still qualify for this program, as long as you haven't physically left the country.
Se la corte ya ha hecho una orden de deportación que se pasa por muchas personas que los papás, por ter entrado ilegalmente o estar ilegal, la corte da la orden de deportación a la familia toda. Entonces, sí, se pasa muchas veces, que uno sería lo deportable y la familia toda entra, dice que sí, eso cualifica. Mesmo que ya la persona todavía está acá, con la orden ya firmada pelo juiz, cualifica para
programa.
cancelar. Lo cancela la deportación, reverte.
Yeah, I would even go so far as to say that if the person was here on June 15th and met all of these qualifying things, been here for at least 5 years in high school diploma and so forth, that if they left the country since then, even under an order of deportation, I think they qualify. Now, it's a good question exactly how to do that kind of case, but that's a little beyond the scope of our conversation tonight. So, but anyhow, at this point, does anybody have any questions about about what we've done so far?
How long does it take for us to get an answer after you apply?
That's a good question. They told us today that they expected several months, but they also told us that it would be, what did they call it, normal processing time, which we know is about, for the work authorization, for example, we know that's about 90 days. Now, I know that there are going to be a lot of people filing, and therefore I would have to assume that that's going to slow things down.
los primeros que someten sus aplicaciones van a tener mejor resultado de tener rápido. Un permiso de trabajo en general leva como no máximo 3 meses, 98 días. Entonces, posiblemente lo work permit primero, que van a ser posiblemente rápido y después la...
Somebody say maybe they send in the social security too, or
Sí,
you have to
así
go
que
into the office.
reciba su permiso de trabajo, entonces tiene que ir a
For example, my mom, we've been here for more than 20 years, or say we've been to school or nothing like that. She's still applying. No. For the something.
cuando llegado.
We got here in
Tenía que
98.
ser desde